In a sun-bleached desert town called Solmere, where tumbleweeds rolled across cracked roads and the heat shimmered like ghosts in the distance, lived a woman named Aria Quinn. At 31 years old, Aria had built a quiet life within the dust-choked stillness of the place she called home. She lived in a small adobe house on the edge of town, surrounded by desert brush and the occasional howl of coyotes in the night. To outsiders, Solmere seemed lifeless. But to Aria, it had once been paradise. It was here, 3 years ago, that she had married a man who made her believe in magic again. His name was Silas. Dark-eyed, silver-tongued, with the confidence of someone who could talk the moon out of hiding, Silas had swept into her life like a sandstorm, unexpected and impossible to ignore. Aria met him at a gas station off Highway 9, where she was fixing a flat tire under the searing sun. He stopped to help, and by the time the spare was on, she was already captivated. He called her Sunbird, and the nickname stuck. Back then, Aria was a third-grade teacher at the local school, known for her kindness, her garden full of lavender and succulents, and the way she always wore bright scarves in her hair. Silas was an ambitious entrepreneur, or so he claimed. He had big plans: a desert art gallery, a luxury boutique hotel, a retreat center for people seeking peace. He painted dreams like murals in the sky. Aria, lonely and romantic at heart, believed every stroke of his brush. They married within a year. Silas convinced her to leave her job and help manage the vision, telling her they were building something sacred. "You and me, Sunbird. We'll make something no one has ever seen." Aria gave everything to their dream. She sold her family's land, emptied her savings, and poured herself into their adobe compound, a series of structures Silas insisted would one day host retreats and art shows. But as the months passed, the buildings remained shells. Promises went unfulfilled. Silas was always waiting on funding, dealing with permits, or chasing investors. In the meantime, Aria kept the place alive, cooking, cleaning, budgeting. And soon, she was pregnant. The birth of their son, Leo, felt like a beacon of hope. Silas was overjoyed at first, doting on their baby boy like a proud lion. But the glow didn't last. When Leo turned 1, Silas's charm began to corrode. Where once there had been poetry, now there was pressure. His failures as a businessman mounted, and he began to shift blame like sand in the wind. "Why is dinner always cold? What do you even do all day? If it weren't for me, you'd be nothing but a barefoot teacher in a dusty classroom." The words weren't fists, but they bruised just the same. Aria told herself it was stress. That he just needed time. That this wasn't the real Silas. She avoided arguments. She made meals on time. She kept the house spotless. Anything to avoid the storm brewing behind his eyes. But storms don't care how clean the house is. One evening, after a long and brutal heat wave, Aria found herself in the kitchen with Leo sniffling on her hip, feverish and flushed. She had spent the entire day trying to soothe him, using cool cloths, feeding him tiny spoonfuls of broth, singing lullabies until her throat ached. Dinner was late. Not burned. Not forgotten. Just 30 minutes off. She heard Silas's boots crunch across the gravel outside just as she placed the pot of stew on the stove. She froze, her body already preparing for impact. The screen door slammed open. "Aria," he barked, "why is dinner not ready?" She turned slowly. "I had to take care of Leo. He's not well. Excuses." His voice was cold steel now. Silas wasn't shouting, yet, but that was worse. The quiet rage. The disapproving eyes that flicked to their sick child and back again. "Do you know what I dealt with today?" he hissed, stepping closer. "Investors pulling out. Rent overdue on the gallery space. And I come home to a house that smells like baby sweat and burnt onions." Aria's chest tightened. She rocked Leo gently, trying to keep her voice calm. "I just need a little more time. I'll have everything." He snatched the ladle from the counter and flung it against the wall. The stew splattered in an arc, painting the kitchen tiles in orange. Leo cried. Aria instinctively shielded him, heart hammering. "Put him down," Silas said suddenly. "What? Put him down?" "No." She stepped back, clutching Leo tighter. That was when it happened. Silas's face twisted into something primal. He lunged, not at Leo, but at her. His hands caught her shoulder, and with a shove, she stumbled backward. Her heel caught the rug, and her balance gave way. The fall seemed to last forever. She felt the sharp edge of the stair rail, then the gravity a second before she hit the steps, knees, elbow, skull. A flash of pain like lightning. And then, darkness. When Aria awoke, everything was blinding and sterile. The steady beep of a heart monitor met her ears, and her arm ached in a thick cast. Her head throbbed beneath gauze. A nurse leaned over her, gentle and kind-eyed. "You're awake. Just rest, Ms. Quinn." "Leo," she murmured, panic rising like bile. "Where's my son?" "He's safe," the nurse said softly. "He's with your neighbor. The one who found you." Aria exhaled, her entire body shaking. "Silas?" The nurse's smile faltered. "He was here. But not anymore." Aria closed her eyes, remembering the moment of the fall, the look in his eyes, Leo's scream. Her heart clenched with the weight of betrayal and the terror of what might come next. She wasn't safe. Not yet. But something inside her stirred, something fierce and rising like desert wind. This wasn't going to be the end. Aria lay in the hospital bed for 3 days, pain radiating through her body like a heatwave that refused to pass. Her fractured arm was set and bound, her bruised ribs ached with every breath, and her head throbbed with a steady drumbeat that mirrored her rising dread. But none of it hurt as much as the silence. Leo wasn't there. Each day, the nurse assured her, "He's safe. He's with Marisol." Marisol, their kind neighbor, had found Aria after hearing a thud and Leo's frantic cries. She had called 911, wrapped Leo in a towel, and ridden in the ambulance behind them. Aria remembered flashes, Marisol's worried eyes, the feel of her blood sticking to the tiles, Leo's terrified sobs muffled by the thundering in her ears. She should have protected him better. Her body might have broken, but her guilt threatened to tear her soul in half. On the 3rd morning, Aria's nurse wheeled in a tray of food, plain eggs, dry toast, and tea. She wasn't hungry. She poked at the eggs absently when the air in the room shifted. The door opened with a slow creak. Standing there, like a ghost out of a dream, was Silas. Clean-shaven, in his favorite denim jacket, arms crossed. Not a hair out of place. And not even a hint of guilt in his eyes. Aria froze, her fork clattering to the floor. "Are you finished with this performance?" he asked coolly. She blinked. "Performance?" He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. The audacity of his calm, like he hadn't thrown her down a flight of stairs. Like she'd tripped over her own life. "I told the doctors it was an accident. You slipped. They're not charging me, so let's not make this into something it's not." He gave a tight, fake smile. "I know you're upset. You're emotional. But you've always been dramatic when you're overwhelmed." The room tilted slightly. Whether from the concussion or the fury, she couldn't tell. "You pushed me," she said, her voice low, trembling. "You could have killed me." Leo saw everything. He rolled his eyes. "You're twisting things. You lost your balance. Maybe if you hadn't been holding him like some scared rabbit." "Get out," she whispered. Silas didn't move. He came closer. "I came here for you, Aria. I brought you flowers." He gestured to a bouquet he'd set by the door. "Dusty roses, her favorites, once. Look, I lost my temper. But we've both made mistakes. I forgave you for burning the rice that night in January, didn't I?" She flinched. He was comparing attempted murder to overcooked rice. "I'm done, Silas." He didn't like that. His expression darkened. He stepped closer and leaned in, his voice barely a breath. "You think you can just walk away from me? You think anyone's going to take your word over mine? You're nothing without me, Sunbird." Aria's pulse pounded in her ears. For the first time in years, she didn't shrink. She looked him dead in the eyes. "I'd rather be nothing than be yours." That was when the door opened again. This time, a nurse entered. Behind her stood 2 security guards and a uniformed officer. "Mr. Quinn," the nurse said firmly, eyes narrowed. "You were asked not to return. We're going to have to escort you out." Silas turned, his charming smile snapping back into place. "There's no need. I was just leaving." The officer stepped forward. "Step away from the patient. Now." His jaw clenched. For a brief second, he looked like he might explode, but then he smirked and backed away. "This isn't over," he muttered, and walked out under watchful eyes. When the room was finally silent again, Aria's body collapsed into the pillows. Her hands were trembling so badly she couldn't even lift the tea to her lips. That night, Mary's soul visited. She arrived quietly, holding Leo in her arms like a sacred treasure. The moment Aria saw her son, her heart shattered and mended all at once. Leo wriggled free and ran to her side, careful not to touch the bandaged parts. "Mommy," he whispered, climbing into her arms. Aria kissed his forehead. He smelled like chamomile and crayons. "Like home." "I'm so sorry," she said through tears. "I should have protected you." "You did," Mary's soul said gently, placing a hand on Aria's shoulder. "You survived. That's how you protect him now." Aria looked up at her friend. "I don't know where to go. I can't go back to that house." "Then don't," Mary's soul said without hesitation. "Stay with me until you're strong again. We'll figure it out." That night, as Leo curled beside her and sleep took him like a soft tide, Aria stared at the hospital ceiling. The pain was still there. The trauma would take time. But the silence was different now, no longer a void of fear, but a space where hope could echo. She would not return to the desert dream that Silas built like a mirage. She would walk through the dunes, past the bones of her old life, towards something real. Something free. 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, Aria found herself sleeping on a pull-out couch in Mary Soul's modest bungalow on the east side of Solmere. It wasn't glamorous, creaky floorboards, humming pipes, the occasional scorpion in the tub, but it was safe. For the first time in years, she didn't wake up to yelling or walk on eggshells with every step. Leo slept in the guest room, curled in a blanket fort Mary Soul helped him build. He'd started laughing again. Quiet at first, but growing more confident each day. Aria's heart swelled with bittersweet joy every time she heard his little giggle echo through the hall. But safety came with its own challenges. Her arm, still in a sling, made even simple tasks difficult. She couldn't drive. Her job as a teacher was long gone. The savings she once had were buried in Silas's failed projects, if they still existed at all. Every time she opened her phone, missed calls and voicemails from unknown numbers blinked back like blinking eyes in the dark. And then there were the letters. 3 had arrived already. Handwritten, addressed to her in careful block letters. All unsigned. All with the same message. "We belong together. Stop pretending otherwise." The police were investigating, but they hadn't found Silas. After the incident at the hospital, he had disappeared, vanished from the compound, abandoned his phone, cut off his business associates. He was officially a fugitive, but Aria knew him too well. He hadn't disappeared. He was hunting shadows. He was waiting. Despite the fear that crawled in her spine, Aria pressed forward. Mary Soul introduced her to a woman named Tessa, an advocate from a local domestic violence shelter, New Bloom House. Tessa was quiet but firm, with gentle eyes and a clipboard always in hand. "You're doing everything right," Tessa said one morning over coffee. "You've reported. You're documenting. But I won't lie to you, Silas is dangerous. His obsession won't fade quickly." Aria nodded, staring at the steam rising from her mug. "He used to read poetry to me at night. Now he leaves threats on my doorstep." "How does that even happen?" Tessa didn't answer with a platitude. She simply said, "Men like Silas don't love. They possess. When possession slips away, they unravel." She paused, then added, "But they're not the only ones with fire." As the investigation unfolded, more of Silas's past came into view. His business dealings were under federal scrutiny. Investors from Phoenix, Flagstaff, and even out of state were coming forward with accusations of fraud. He had falsified permits, used fake names to open bank accounts, and was months behind on land taxes for the compound. It wasn't just abuse. It was a web of lies, and Aria was at the center of it. A detective named Ramon Hayes took over the case. Gruff but sympathetic, he kept Aria updated on every development. "We found his truck abandoned near the border," he told her one evening on Marisol's porch. "No plates, windshield smashed in. We think he wanted it to be found. A diversion." "Why?" Aria asked, holding Leo tightly on her lap. "Because men like Silas don't disappear. They want you to think they're gone until they decide to reappear." The tension grew with each day that passed. Aria started having nightmares, twisting dreams where Silas whispered her name from inside her own walls. In one, she found him hiding in Leo's toy chest. In another, he was crawling across the ceiling like a spider. She'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, her arm aching like it remembered the fall even when her mind tried to forget. One night, Leo drew a picture, crayons scrawled across folded paper. "This is you, and me," he said proudly. "And this is our new house. With no scary parts." Aria looked at the picture. A little square home with smiling stick figures and a huge sun overhead. She nearly cried. "Is it okay that we don't go back?" she asked him softly. Leo nodded. "We're not supposed to go where the monsters live." With Tess's help and guidance from Detective Hayes, Aria filed for a restraining order, took emergency custody of Leo, and began applying for state assistance. Her lawyer, a firecracker named Eleanora Briggs, agreed to represent her pro bono in the custody battle they knew would come. Because Silas, even from the shadows, was planning. A few days later, Aria received a summons. Silas was suing for full custody of Leo. The document painted her as unstable, accused her of lying, of injuring herself to gain sympathy, of corrupting their son against his father. It accused Marisol of interfering, of turning Leo against Silas. It even included doctored photos of Aria partying with strange men, clearly old, heavily edited pictures taken before she'd even met Silas. The rage nearly consumed her. But not this time. Instead of letting it devour her, she turned it into resolve. She sat down, pulled her broken arm closer, and began documenting every incident, every bruise, every voicemail. She compiled texts, timelines, photos. Eleanora gathered hospital records, police reports, and witness statements, including from the nurse who saw Silas grab her. They would go to court. They would tell the truth. And this time, Silas would hear her voice not as a whisper of surrender, but as the cry of a woman who had endured fire and refused to burn. One evening, as the desert sky faded into violet twilight, Aria stood barefoot in Marisol's backyard. The dry wind tugged at her dress as she stared at the horizon. "I'm not scared anymore," she whispered. She meant it. Not because Silas was gone, but because she was done hiding. The court date was set. The battle was coming. But this time, she would not fight it alone. The courthouse in Solmere stood like a relic from another time, faded stone, creaking wood doors, and echoes of old justice trapped in its hallways. On the morning of the custody trial, the desert sun rose in a blaze of copper and gold, scorching the horizon like it, too, was preparing for war. Inside one of the modest courtrooms, Aria sat at the plaintiff's table, her heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking of the courtroom clock. She wore a simple slate blue dress, her arms still stiff in a lighter cast, her eyes sharp, guarded, but unbroken. Beside her sat Eleanora Briggs, her lawyer, a woman who didn't so much walk into courtrooms as march into them like battlefields. Her short cropped hair, pressed blazer, and voice like flint made her a force even judges didn't ignore. On the other side of the room sat Silas Quinn, perfectly groomed in a charcoal suit and blood-red tie. He wore the same smile he had always used to charm investors and manipulate strangers, rehearsed, polished, hollow. But Aria saw it clearly now, he wasn't calm. He was cornered. His eyes darted, his lips burst, and his fingers tapped against the table like the ticking of a bomb. The judge entered, a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a no-nonsense air. He greeted both sides, reviewed the evidence summaries, and called for opening arguments. Silas's lawyer, a sleek man in an expensive suit, began. Your Honor, my client is a loving father wrongfully denied access to his child. He is a victim of a cruel vendetta, painted as an abuser with no real proof, based solely on the accusations of a woman whose motivations are personal, not parental. Aria flinched. But Eleonora stood without missing a beat. Your Honor, she began, the evidence we've provided speaks for itself. Medical records, police reports, eyewitness testimony, and security footage confirm what this man has done, not only to Miss Quinn, but in the presence of their son. This is not about revenge. It's about protection. The judge nodded. Proceed with witness testimony. The first to take the stand was Nurse Aria Blevins, the woman who had seen Silas grab Aria in the hospital. I witnessed him gripping her arm. She was already in a sling. She looked terrified, she said, voice steady. He wasn't there to comfort her. He was there to control her. Next was Detective Hayes. He explained the evidence found at the Quinn compound, abandoned business records, debts, false IDs. Then came Mary Soul, Aria's neighbor, who broke down slightly when describing the night she found Aria crumpled at the base of the stairs. He had already left, Mary Soul said, voice cracking. Leo was screaming. And Aria was barely breathing. I thought she was dead. The courtroom grew quiet. Then, it was Aria's turn. She stepped onto the witness stand, heart pounding like thunder behind her ribs. She took her oath. Sat down. Folded her hands in her lap. Eleonora asked her to explain everything, from her first meeting with Silas to the moment he pushed her. Aria spoke slowly, her voice raw but unwavering. At first, he was kind. The kind of man who makes you believe in stars. But little by little, he chipped away at who I was. He stopped listening, stopped caring, unless it was about control. Every decision became his. Every mistake became mine. She paused, looking briefly at Silas, who stared forward, expression unreadable. When our son was born, I thought he'd change. I thought Leo would be the light that softened him. But instead, Silas became colder. He saw Leo not as a blessing, but a burden. He began snapping at him, yelling at him for just being a child. Aria clenched her fists. Then one night, I was tending to Leo because he had a fever. I was late getting dinner ready. That's all. And Silas pushed me down the stairs. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. He came to the hospital afterward, not to apologize, but to mock me. And when I told him to leave, he grabbed my injured arm. It wasn't about love. It was about ownership. Her voice shook only slightly. I'm not here to punish him. I am here to protect my son. Leo deserves a life where he can grow without fear, where love isn't a weapon. The judge nodded, then turned to Silas. Mr. Quinn, you may cross-examine. Silas stood himself. He waved off his lawyer and asked to address Aria directly. Permission granted, the judge said warily. Silas approached the witness stand slowly, hands clasped behind his back. Sunbird, he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Do you remember the night I stayed up painting Leo's nursery sky blue? The music we played, the way we danced? Aria didn't respond. Silas continued, his voice soft, fake. You know I would never hurt you. That fall? It was an accident. You slipped. I tried to catch you. He leaned in. You're scared. I get it. But Leo needs his father. And deep down, you know you still need me too. Aria looked him in the eye. Her voice was calm and razor-sharp. No, Silas. What Leo needs is a home where the sky is really blue, not just painted that way. The final nail came in the form of voicemail Silas had left. Eleonora played 3. You think this is over? I'll take Leo. You'll regret this. Stop pretending you can survive without me. I made you. And I can break you. Each one hit like a hammer. When the tapes ended, the judge sat in silence. Then, slowly, he spoke. After careful consideration, and in light of overwhelming evidence of abuse, manipulation, and endangerment, I rule in favor of Ms. Aria Quinn. Sole custody of the minor Leo Quinn is hereby granted to the plaintiff. Mr. Silas Quinn is to have no visitation rights until further court evaluation. A restraining order is also issued for both Ms. Quinn and her son. The gavel came down like thunder. Silas's mask cracked. He rose, face contorted with rage. You'll regret this, Aria. You can't erase me. Bailiffs were already moving in. They took him by the arms as he shouted, struggled, cursed. But Aria didn't flinch. She sat still, Leo's tiny drawing of their new house tucked in her purse like a talisman. It was over. The fire had burned through. And she was still standing. 6 months after the trial, spring returned to Solmere. It came quietly, through warm breezes that whispered across the sand, desert flowers blooming in small, defiant bursts of color, and the steady hum of new life rebuilding itself. Aria Quinn stood on the porch of her new home, a modest stucco cottage just outside the heart of town. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a backyard tangled with sunflowers, and paint that peeled in certain corners. But it was hers. It was safe. Inside, Leo sat on the floor, building a cardboard spaceship with glitter glue and stickers. He was humming. Happy. The kind of happy that doesn't ask for permission. The months following the custody battle had been anything but easy. Healing never followed a straight line. There were nights Aria still woke up breathless, her mind dragging her back to stairwells and slammed doors. She'd sit upright in bed, listen for Leo's breathing down the hall, and remind herself, you're here now. He can't reach you. Therapy helped. So did Tessa from New Bloom House, who became more than an advocate, she became a friend. And Eleonora, ever the firebrand, had stuck with Aria through the long process of securing permanent protective orders and assisting in a civil lawsuit against Silas for financial abuse. They won. The court froze Silas's remaining assets. What little money he had left was used to pay back debts and cover some of Aria's medical bills. The rest was gone, swallowed up by the hollow empire he built on manipulation and lies. Silas himself had been transferred to a prison in another state. Sentenced to 12 years without parole for child endangerment, assault, and fraud. He tried appealing, twice. Both attempts were denied. His letters never reached Aria. She had blocked them all. But Aria didn't let her story end with the gavel. Once she felt strong enough, she began writing. First in a private journal, then on a blog she called Ashes and Bloom. She didn't use her full name at first. Just initials. But word spread quickly. Her posts, raw and real, resonated with others. Soon, other women began messaging her, some from Solmere, some from halfway across the world. They told her, you made me feel seen. I didn't know it was okay to leave. Because of you, I took my child and ran. Aria cried the first time she read those words. Not out of sadness, but out of something heavier, recognition. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was lighting the path for others. A local nonprofit reached out after reading her story. They asked if she'd speak at a community event for survivors of abuse. Aria was terrified. But when she stepped onto that small stage in front of 30 folding chairs, clutching Leo's drawing of a safe house in her pocket, she felt her voice rise, not as a whisper, but a banner. My name is Aria Quinn, she said. And I'm not a victim. I'm a mother, a fighter, a woman who burned in silence until I learned I deserved to bloom. Applause followed, gentle at first, then thunderous. That summer, Aria planted a new garden behind her house. Lavender, just like the ones from her old life. Daisies, because Leo liked to pick them and give them to the neighbors. Sunflowers, tall and proud, standing like warriors against the sky. Leo called them the guardians. And every morning, before breakfast, they'd go outside and water them together. "Mom," he asked one day, his small hand in hers, "when will the flowers stop growing?" She smiled, brushing a curl from his forehead. "Not for a long, long time," she said. "They're just getting started. Just like her."